Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. We're going to talk about Gary Gygax. We're going to talk about flat gray slab in Oak Hill Cemetery in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and what a man is owed. All right, okay. So, I've been never stopped thinking about Gary Gygax. I think about him very deeply, and recently I've been studying his grave. All right, so let me tell you what I know about the grave of Gary Gygax, the man who gave America a new form of freedom and gave humanity extra life. All right, okay, so Gary Gygax, just to set it into cement, you got George Washington, you had Harriet Tubman, and you have Gary Gygax. American heroes of importance in that order, right? Like, just incredible. Oh, and actually, I'm not sure it's even that order. I think what Gary did actually probably surpasses what Harriet Tubman did and what George Washington did together, right? I have an incredibly high opinion of Gary Gygax. And something that haunts me, it haunts me, like I think I lose sleep over this, is that Gary is not honored the way he should be honored. In fact, and here's the issue. I think we know that. I want you to think about American soldiers, right? If you don't honor them, you dishonor them. And the switch is quick, right? Like, American soldiers get mad respect, right? It's a third rail in American politics and in American culture. You cannot no one can speak ill of American soldiers, period. Like, they are culturally immune from virtually any from a single ill will, from even a single ill word, right? Because of the service they've done, right? And I feel it's the same for Gary. I think he's done this huge, tremendous service for humanity, and he deserves respect. And I don't think he's getting it. I don't think he's getting the respect he deserves. So I want to talk about a flat gray slab in Oak Hill Cemetery in Lake Geneva, Washington. All right. So Gary died in 2008. Okay. And he was buried in Lake Geneva. That's where Dungeons & Dragons was born, in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, okay? It was born in America by an American hero, Gary Gygax, right? And actually, if you ever get a chance, go check out Matthew Mercer and Satine Phoenix's amazing visit to the actual house where Dungeons & Dragons was born and where it really, manifested, right? It's truly incredible. And I'm not kidding. If you watch Satine Phoenix video, it's like a pilgrimage. It looks like a pilgrimage, right? It's incredible. Like, it looks like she's returning to a sacred space. If you think I'm exaggerating, watch it and you'll see I'm right, right? Like, all right. So basically, I want to talk about my mother-in-law, all right? My mother-in-law, beautiful woman, on the inside, and I learned a lot from her, right? And her name was Norma, and she's a big part of my life. So Norma always gave me respect. She always respected me, right? But I don't think she liked me. And the reality is, whenever I would come, I was always treated as a guest. I was always shown respect. But the reality is, I don't think I ever really became friends with Norma, or even got to a comfortable association. Like, I just didn't, But I was at her house a lot, right? And I want to be clear, she was never unkind or cruel to me in any way. Nothing but respect from her. But not any affection or we never really built a friendship, right? But I got to see her up close, right? And, over a lot of time, because I spent all this time with her daughter, my beautiful wife, and and I was there, for the last 20 years of Norma's life, and I was a part of her life. She was a part of my life. She lived in Louisville, Kentucky, and we would go back, and see family there, because we live in Philly, right? Near Philly. And when Norma died, it took a year for them to finish her headstone. It's 3 feet tall and 4 feet wide. It has no less than 50 words on it, like epithets, and Norma's face is carved in stone, right? And every time we go back, We put flowers on her grave, and she is honored by every member of that family, right? Her tombstone makes Gary Gygax's tombstone look like a pebble that was thrown on the ground, right? And my mother-in-law was a great woman, but she didn't create anything that spanned the earth, right? She didn't create something that approaches immortality for many people who will never have more life than this life on earth. Gary Gygax did so much for America and for the world that it makes me upset that his grave is a flat gray slab that literally sits on the ground over his grave, and it says Ernest Gary Gygax. It says the date he was born, it says the date he died, and it says beloved father and grandfather. It doesn't even say that he created the world's greatest tabletop role-playing game. It doesn't say that he created Dungeons & Dragons. It doesn't say that he invented Unbound Identity or Unbound Immersion, right? And frankly, if you were to compare his grave to my mother-in-law's grave, you would think that Ernest Gary Gygax died as an insurance adjuster, and my mother-in-law was a queen, which she was, but not a literal one. She was only a queen to the family, right? By the way, Norma was so beloved that multiple of her grandchildren have tattoos of her name or her face on them. Like, she crushed it in this world. Like, she was so well beloved, right? Another thing I always admire about Norma was that she had friends that she had for like 4 decades. Like, she had a crew of people that she had known for 4 decades. I could barely keep friends for 5 years, right? Like, she's an amazing person, right? And she deserves her tombstone. But Gary's there should be a sepulcher with 4, monoliths around it. He's just not being honored the way he should. Now, whose fault is this? It is not the Gygax's family's fault. I think the Gygax family put the best stone they could on Ernest Gary Gygax's grave. They gave him the best stone they could give him, right? But the reality is, the Gygax family, in my opinion, should never been in a position to bury their own father. Dungeons & Dragons. Josephine Baker was recently buried in state in France, right? Because she was a national hero, right? And the reality is, and she was exhumed, right, to be put there. The reality is, I don't think it's great when you exhume people, right? If you put somebody in the earth, maybe you should keep them there, right? But the reality is, I think the U.S. government should have recognized that the death of Gary Gygax was so important that the government should have stepped in and said, here's, $20 million to do this right? And he's going to be in a marble sepulcher that has D20s on every corner, and there's going to be 3 pillars around it, and one of them will, they'll be 40 feet tall. They'll also be completely marble as well, and one will say exploration, one will say interaction, and one will say combat, right? Like, there should have been, all of this should have been raised on a 10-foot marble dais, right? Like, this should have been a place where when you reach the end of your pilgrimage to see where your American champion, your American hero, your American, a person who tried to create immortality for others and got pretty darn close, right? That, it's nuts. Like, it's not right that Gary Gygax sits under a flat grave slab that doesn't even mention that he was even a game designer, let alone a world champion, right? Of giving new freedoms and new life to people, right? It's sad and it frustrates me, right? So the point here is Norma's grave is well deserved, right? But it is a little frustrating to me that my mother-in-law has a grave that honors her, and in my opinion, the grave that was put, the gravestone that was put over Ernest Gary Gygax. It just does not do justice to who and what that man was. It's no fault of the Gygax family. They did the best they could, right? But the reality is they should have never been in a position to have to pay for, what would honor their father, because America should have paid for that, right? I truly believe that the correct budget for the burying of, I think he should have been buried in state. Like, this is crazy. Like, I just don't think it's right that Gary Gygax sits under a flat gray slab in Oak Hill Cemetery in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and my mother-in-law is in Louisville, Kentucky, in this super dope, like, crazy nice, crazy honoring, like, well honored headstone, and we just, no one sees Gary for what he is, right? Except me. It's so frustrating, and I'm hoping we're gonna get there. I don't want the world to miss what happened, and some days I'm down. I'm down because I just don't think the world sees what happened in 1970, 74, and I'm aware I'm just not that effective of getting the word out and making it a winsome reality. I hope I can get better at it. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. What's the situation for your mother-in-law's grave, right? And have you seen somebody who was buried properly and is honored, in their grave? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.